The year I came of age, my father had me throw an embroidered ball to choose a husband. In order to marry a good man, all the men who could come to catch the embroidered ball were carefully selected by my father, and only those with invitations were allowed to enter. On the same day, the emperor and his consort left the palace in plain clothes. Imperial consort Shenrong found it amusing, so she had her secret guard throw the street corner beggar in and even helped him snatch the embroidered ball. The beggar had no invitation, so my father naturally refused to acknowledge him. However, Shenrong immediately revealed her identity on the spot, using the emperor's authority to force me to marry the beggar. Once the beggar gained wealth and status, he abused his power, relying on the imperial marriage. Not only did he cause my father's death from anger, but he also pushed me, heavily pregnant, off the tower, living a second life. I looked at Shenrong, disguised as a man in the audience, and decisively threw the embroidered ball to the emperor beside her. This time, I want wealth and honor. I also want their lives. As for the final memory of my previous life, it was Zhongda, drunk, who openly climbed onto my bed with a courtesan in his arms, saying he wanted me to serve him too. I refused and even slapped him across the face. Enraged and humiliated, Zhongda pushed me off the loft, seeing the blood flowing beneath me. He not only didn't call for a doctor but also punched me again and again. Do you think you're something special? The emperor arranged the marriage. The imperial concubine acted as matchmaker. Even if you're the daughter of an official, you'll have to follow me, a beggar, for the rest of your life, as Zhongda's woman. If you don't obey, I'll beat you to death. His face was contorted with rage, as he attempted to vent his inner discontent in this manner, in the final moments before death. I don't know where the strength came from, but I pulled the golden hairpin from my bun and thrust it fiercely into his neck. If we're going to die, then let's go together, just a bit unwilling. And those two culprits, if heaven has eyes, I hope they can go to hell together. Opening my eyes again, I actually returned to the day of choosing a husband by throwing the embroidered ball. Father handed the embroidered ball to me, just like in my previous life, with a hint of warm tears in his eyes. He spoke softly, "RWN, may you find a good husband and live a smooth and happy life." Seeing father again, I was still somewhat dazed. This little old man with graying hair was just a minor official under the emperor in the capital, yet he gave all his love to me, never letting me suffer a single hardship. Even when it came to choosing a husband, he followed the customs of my mother's hometown, building a colorful tower and holding a marriage lottery by tossing an embroidered ball. Because back then, my mother threw the embroidered ball to my father. They loved each other deeply for most of their lives. Even after my mother passed away suddenly, he never remarried or took a concubine, focusing solely on raising me, and I was afraid of throwing the embroidered ball to someone unworthy. I made a special effort to investigate in advance, and after carefully selecting for more than half a year, I finally sent the limited number of invitations to the talented and handsome young men in the capital. This way, no matter who catches my embroidered ball, I will be able to live a peaceful and smooth life. But fate has a way of playing tricks. As my thoughts returned, my gaze swept over the crowd below and finally settled on Shenrong's face, who was watching the excitement not far away. The most favored imperial consort in the palace, everyone says she is pure and courageous. And despite her high status, she always stands up for those of humble origins. I stared at her, and she looked back at me, a hint of amusement in her eyes. After a long moment of eye contact, she suddenly called for a hidden guard. The guard listened attentively for a moment before disappearing without a trace. Watching the secret guard leave, Shenrong slowly raised her head and flashed a brilliant smile at me standing upstairs. In my previous life, I didn't understand the meaning behind her smile. I simply followed the rules and threw the embroidered ball as soon as the auspicious time arrived. But before it could even land, the embroidered ball, like a kite with a broken string, swayed precariously in the air, suddenly changed direction, and ended up hitting a beggar in the corner. The beggar had no invitation, so father naturally did not recognize this son-in-law. It was because it had been stated earlier. Anyone who comes to the Yi family to catch the embroidered ball must hold an invitation for it to count. However, Shunrong appeared at this moment. She revealed her identity, and along with the silent young man beside her, everyone knew he was the emperor, and they all knelt down in reverence. Shunrong, using the emperor's presence as a witness and the fact that one cannot deceive the ruler, forced me to accept this marriage arrangement. She said to me, "All people under heaven are equal. Since Miss Yi chose to throw the embroidered ball to select a husband, whoever is chosen is a matter of fate. How could a dignified young lady from an official family look down upon a beggar and feel ashamed?" With that, she turned to the emperor beside her with a coquettish smile. "Your Majesty, do you think this pair of lovers is well matched?" The emperor nodded slightly. Though he said nothing, it was as good as tacit approval of her words. Thus, this marriage became one bestowed by the Son of Heaven. However, Zhong Die had been a beggar for decades. Even after washing his face clean, he was still a rather handsome young man, but he had always been idle and useless by nature. Once he had wealth and status in his hands, he became so elated that he forgot his place. Not only did he frequent the brothels every night, he also took advantage of the emperor's arranged marriage and brought a courtesan to my father's 60th birthday banquet, ultimately causing his death from sheer anger. Yet even in the face of such despicable behavior, Shunrong simply laughed it off. It must be that the Yi family treated their son-in-law poorly, causing Zhong Die to feel wronged, which led to such a disaster. The imperial consort spoke. "And after Zhong Die had spent a round in prison, he actually gained 3 pounds, until the very end, when I died by his hand. Only then did Zhong Die tell me, 'Back when you threw the embroidered ball to choose a husband, the imperial consort had never seen such a way of selecting a groom. She had someone throw me in, and then ordered her secret guards to help me catch the embroidered ball, just to see how you would react. So, no matter how I treated you, she would always side with me.' As for the reason, it was simply that Shunrong had never seen such a way of selecting a groom. Thus, evil thoughts arose in my heart, wondering if a young lady from an official family were chosen by a beggar, would she weep and hang herself with a white silk cord, or would she struggle to survive under the overwhelming pressure of immense power? She treated my life as a stage, merely seeking amusement. This time, she still chose to act in the same way. Zhong Die, still drowsy with sleep, was thus tossed into a corner, but beneath the colorful tower, the crowd was now in an uproar. With everyone's eyes fixed on me, thus, no one noticed Zhong Die's presence. "Miss, the auspicious hour has arrived. It's time for you to throw the embroidered ball," the matron whispered, supporting me as I walked to the railing, then quietly stepped back. I held the embroidered ball in my arms, but unlike in her previous life, she did not immediately drop it with a flushed face. Instead, she looked at Shunrong not far away, tugged at Zhu Chengxian beside her, snatched the invitation from a passing gentleman, and swaggered in with the help of the hidden guards. In my previous life, I vaguely noticed this chaos, but my attention was still entirely focused on the embroidered ball. Now, having been reborn, it just so happens to be at such a critical moment. Then I can only take a gamble. Holding the embroidered ball, as Zhu Chengxian kept approaching, I pretended to throw it in the opposite direction. Everyone present instinctively ran toward that side. And even the hidden guards, who had received orders, had their attention drawn away. At the same moment, I quickly tossed the embroidered ball into Zhu Chengshuan's arms. Since it's a groom selection by throwing the embroidered ball, the skill of throwing the ball had naturally been taught by a master long ago, so she could simply aim for the person she fancied and accurately toss it into his arms, not to mention that the embroidered ball was being thrown to Zhu Chengxian. The hidden guards in the shadows, even if they wanted to intervene, would never dare to use stones to strike the ball, as there was a 1 in 10,000 chance that a stone might hit Zhu Chengxian instead. Therefore, he was determined to catch this embroidered ball. After a long while, Zhu Chengxian lowered his gaze to look at the embroidered ball in his arms, his eyes momentarily filled with astonishment. I quickly looked at my father, who also noticed my gaze and immediately had the servant step forward to surround Zhu Chengxian. He was just a minor official who had never seen the emperor in his entire life, so there was no reason for him to be afraid. He only shouted loudly. My worthy son-in-law, Shenrong, stood beside him, equally caught off guard by the sudden appearance of the embroidered ball. When I came to my senses, my face was extremely pale. I snatched the embroidered ball from Zhu Chengshuan's hands in a panic and threw it to the ground. The embroidered ball rolled to Zhong Die's feet. Shenrong quickly shouted, "The embroidered ball was snatched by this beggar. This young lady should marry the beggar." Father took me downstairs and walked straight to Zhu Chengxian, looking somewhat displeased at Shenrong. Even if he was unwilling to marry me, he shouldn't have said I should marry a beggar. If forced to choose between the two, Father would naturally choose Zhu Chengxian. This young master, I do not recall having sent you an invitation. However, regardless of that, according to today's rules, the embroidered ball has already landed in this young master's hands. Even if you snatch it away and throw it to someone else, it will be of no use. Shenrong, who was doted upon by thousands in the palace, had never been scolded like this before. Feeling wronged, she immediately wanted to call for her hidden guards. Intending to have our entire family executed, I quickly stepped forward and bowed gracefully to them. Since this young master has caught my embroidered ball, according to the rules of today's husband selection, you should be my husband. As I spoke, a gentle breeze blew by, and the veil on my face was swept to the ground. I don't. Zhu Chengxian, who had been quite resistant at first, was momentarily stunned when he saw my face. And the words of refusal he had intended to say never left his lips. In my previous life, I had always strictly adhered to the rules and never once removed my veil, until the emperor's final decree was spoken. After everything was settled, the veil was torn off by Zhong Die and thrown to the ground. Zhu Chengxian, who was about to leave, caught sight of my face, his eyes filled with unconcealed astonishment and a hint of regret. But the emperor's word is law, and there is no taking it back. So this time, I will be the one to remove the veil first. Letting Zhu Chengxian see this face of mine, I inherited the gentle grace of my mother, a woman from the south of the Yangtze River, and when my eyes glistened with tears, it always evoked a special sense of pity in others. Just like at this moment, I gazed at Zhu Chengxian with tear-filled eyes. Young master, are you unwilling to marry me? Of course I am unwilling. Shenrong stepped forward first, positioning himself protectively in front of Zhu Chengxian, his gaze toward me filled with such hostility, and the words that followed were equally harsh. How can a young lady from an official family be so shameless? You're in such a hurry to choose a husband for yourself. What if he already has a wife? Would you still be willing to become a concubine? Or do you look down on that beggar? Little do you know, in the eyes of the emperor, all people are equal. To despise a beggar like this shows how malicious your heart truly is. I lowered my eyes, hiding the hatred within them. Then, with a light laugh, I spoke again. Choosing a husband by throwing the embroidered ball is all a matter of fate. If this gentleman already has a wife, I must still enter his household as promised. Even if it means becoming a concubine, I cannot break my word. Miss Yi truly keeps her word. Those who attend the embroidered ball selection for a husband are here because they accepted the invitation and came willingly. If this gentleman is unwilling to marry Miss Yi, then why did he come today? Miss Yi is so reasonable, and this gentleman is dignified and handsome. Please do not do anything heartless. The other gentleman who did not catch the embroidered ball, moved by my words, also spoke up one after another to defend me, with an invitation card. One can enter and catch the embroidered ball. In the previous life, Zhongda was secretly thrown in. He didn't have an invitation card at all, so according to the rules, it could be disregarded, but Shunrong happened to snatch 2 invitation cards, even if the names didn't match. Many young men present were also sons of noble families. Therefore, this gentleman, isn't he the current emperor? In the crowd, someone suddenly exclaimed. And the already buzzing discussions grew even more fervent. Then, the crowd bowed in worship, shouting "Long live the emperor" one after another, effectively confirming Zhu Chengxuan's identity. Shunrong's expression turned extremely unpleasant. Even Zhu Chengxian, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, had no choice but to brace himself and look at me. I am not the one who submitted the betrothal card, yet by a twist of fate, I caught your embroidered ball. Although I have no empress, I cannot offer you the position of a principal wife. Are you truly still willing to marry me? I knelt on the ground, looking up at Zhu Chengxian, and said word by word, throwing the embroidered ball to choose a husband is a marriage ordained by heaven. I am willing to follow the will of heaven. I wonder if your majesty is also willing to follow the will of heaven. I did not answer directly but instead threw the question back to Zhu Chengxian. Just because I am a woman, if I had said on the spot that I was willing to enter the palace, everyone would have said I was greedy for wealth and honor, but if I had said I was unwilling, the embroidered ball was now in Zhongda's hands, and Shunrong would certainly not let me off. Therefore, I could only give an ambiguous answer, leaving the final choice to Zhu Chengxian, as the ruler of a nation. Causing a disturbance at a minister's daughter's wedding without a proper explanation would surely provoke discontent among the women of the realm. You are merely the daughter of an 8th-rank official of such lowly status. What right do you have to enter the palace? Shunrong spoke with resentment, completely forgetting that not long ago she had claimed that all people in the world were equal in the eyes of the emperor. Now, in her eagerness to belittle me, she provoked dissatisfaction among many present who were aware of her identity. Although she is a noble consort, her status is indeed lofty, yet, dressing as a man, causing a scene at the silk ball throwing event, and now claiming that Miss Yi is of lowly status, she is truly too domineering. Exactly. In the past, rumors circulated in the capital that Consort Shen in the palace treated her subordinates with fairness and was an excellent mistress. As the saying goes, seeing is believing. It turns out she is so two-faced. The person speaking kept their voice very low, and with so many people around, it was impossible to tell who it was. Shunrong was so angry her face flushed red, and she raised her hand to hit me. I naturally didn't dodge, because someone would stop her, at least in front of everyone. Zhu Chengxian would never let her cause another scene. Ronga, stop this nonsense, Zhu Chengxian scolded in a low voice, and Shunrong's eyes immediately reddened. Your Majesty, could it be that you have taken a fancy to the beauty of the Yi family's daughter and truly wish to take her as a consort? Your Majesty possesses all under heaven, and naturally, all women are at your disposal. Why must the noble consort be so angry? Women must adhere to the 3 obediences and 4 virtues, and must never harbor jealousy. I spoke softly, watching the expression on her face grow increasingly unpleasant. That look as if she wished she could kill me. Who do you think you are? How could His Majesty possibly take a liking to you? You're just the daughter of a minor official, resorting to schemes and tricks, throwing the embroidered ball to His Majesty, and you actually think you can soar to the top and become a phoenix. As she spoke, her tone was dripping with sarcasm. Zhu Chengxian, being the emperor, might have tried to console Shunrong if they were behind closed doors. However, with everyone watching, Zhu Chengxian naturally placed great importance on his reputation. The tantrums and fits of a little girl, if he were to give in at this moment, he would only be mocked by the people of the world. saying that a dignified emperor was actually terrified of his imperial consort, even allowing the imperial consort to insult court officials. If he did not refute it, it would only chill the hearts of his ministers. Therefore, Zhu Chengxian directly darkened his expression. I caught her embroidered ball, so what's wrong with taking her as my consort? Fine, then go marry the Yi family girl and never come looking for me again. Shunrong never expected that Zhu Chengxian would not only fail to comply with her wishes but even publicly humiliate her on the spot. Caught in an awkward situation, she wiped away her tears and ran off. Zhu Chengshuan's expression turned grim, but with everyone watching, he had no choice but to give me an explanation. In the silence, he untied an exquisite jade pendant from his waist. He handed the pendant to me and said, "Since I have caught your embroidered ball and it happened in front of so many witnesses, if I do not take you as my consort, it will surely damage your reputation. Therefore, let this jade pendant serve as proof. In 3 days, an imperial decree will be delivered to the Yi residence, welcoming you into the palace." I chuckled softly, reached out to take the jade pendant, and kowtowed in gratitude according to the rules. "Your humble subject, I kowtow in thanks for your great grace. This time, I want wealth and honor. I also want their lives." The 3-day deadline passed in the blink of an eye. As the current emperor, Zhu Chengxian naturally had to keep his word. However, Shunrong was, after all, the one who held a special place in his heart, no matter how dissatisfied he was. Seeing her tears softened his resolve. So, to appease Shunrong, I was only granted the title of a 7th-rank Xian Shi and was assigned to live in the Tingshui Pavilion, the farthest from the emperor's quarters. With only 2 palace maids to attend to me, there was no favor or grace to speak of. Seeing the messy Tingshui Pavilion before me, Boyun, who had grown up with me since childhood, now wore a face full of worry. "Miss, to be treated with such disregard as soon as we enter the palace shows that our days ahead will not be easy." I smiled and patted her hand. We had already anticipated such a situation before entering the palace. "Take it easy. There will be plenty of commotion in the future." I guessed correctly. Just as Boyun had finished cleaning the bedchamber with the 2 young palace maids, Shunrong stormed in with a fierce demeanor. She had her attendants force open the gate of the snow-listening pavilion, and without a word, she slapped me as soon as she entered. "Ewn, you certainly have your tricks. Unwilling to marry a beggar, you now think of currying favor with the emperor," she sneered. Lifting my chin with her nail guard, her eyes filled with undisguised disgust. "But this palace will show you how a woman as shallow-eyed as you dies in this bone-devouring, ruthless deep palace." I also responded with a smile, showing no trace of fear in the face of her intimidation. "In that case, I will await that day." She snorted coldly, then turned and left without a second glance. Before leaving, she even kicked the door of my Tingshui Pavilion, which was already on the verge of collapse, making it even more precarious. Boyun quickly took out an ointment from the bundle and gently applied it to the swollen, red areas on my face. "Shunrong is domineering. But fortunately we brought plenty of medicine with us before we came. Please bear with it for now, miss. The days ahead are long, and there will come a time when the tables turn." I nodded, gazing at the scenery outside the window. Today marks my first entry into the palace. According to unwritten custom, the emperor should have chosen my name for the night, but he did not come. Instead, he went straight to Shunrong's Guanju palace. Someone was sent to inquire, and it was discovered that the noble consort was singing a little tune in the imperial garden, the same one she sang when she first met His Majesty. With those old feelings stirred up, His Majesty just... Boyun didn't finish her sentence, but I understood her meaning and felt no anger. Today was my first time entering the palace, and Shunrong, who despises me so much, would naturally do everything in her power to steal His Majesty's favor from me, all because, in this deep palace, A concubine without favor sometimes lives even more difficultly than a palace maid. Naturally, I would not sit idly by and wait for death. The next day, according to the rules, I had to go to Chenxian Palace to pay my respects to the imperial noble consort. The imperial noble consort's maiden name was Shu Ruoxuan, the legitimate second daughter of the Empress Dowager's maternal family, and a cousin of Zhu Chengxian by blood. However, it was originally the eldest daughter of the Shu family who was supposed to enter the palace as the empress, but unforeseen circumstances arose when the eldest daughter suddenly fell ill and passed away, preventing the position of empress from remaining with the Shu family. After discussions among the elders of the Shu clan, they decided to send Shu Ruoxuan, who was already betrothed and promised to another family, into the imperial palace. Since entering the palace, her health has been poor. She has been listless and sickly all day, rarely receiving visitors. Today, I have come to pay my respects as per the rules. Shu Ruoxuan sat in the main seat and gave a reward according to the rules. But before I could express my gratitude, Shenrong walked in. She didn't even bow to Shu Ruoxuan and walked straight up to me, stepping on my hand with her foot, laughing freely, coming to flatter the imperial noble consort so early in the morning. Do you think she's willing to pay you any attention? Still think the rank of attendant is too low, hoping to curry favor with her so you can climb higher and become someone important. My hand hurt, but I didn't move. Instead, I slowly looked up. Peering through the gap at Shu Ruoxuan before me, her expression was quite unpleasant at the moment, and a hint of anger flickered in her eyes. Yet in the end, she said nothing. For a noble consort of such high status to stoop to this level, it truly shows just how much Zhu Chengxian dotes on Shenrong, having nurtured such a spoiled temperament in her. I remember when I first met the noble consort, Your Highness once said that all people under heaven are the same, and told me not to look down on beggars. At that time, I thought that Your Highness had a clear sense of justice in your heart, and even if someone was of low status, you would not easily humiliate them. But after seeing what happened today, it seems I thought too much. I was deliberately mocking her hypocrisy and pretense. Shenrong could naturally hear the hidden meaning in my words. She was already someone who got angry easily, and now she was absolutely furious. She picked up a teacup from the table, ready to throw it at me. You wretch, who allowed you to mock this consort? I had been prepared for this and quickly sidestepped, letting the teacup graze my shoulder and shatter on the floor. Seeing this, Shenrong grew even angrier. She grabbed a nearby vase and hurled it straight at my head. But she didn't notice that I was standing right beside Shu Ruoxuan at that moment, so when the vase came flying, it was very likely to hit Shu Ruoxuan as well. Without a second thought, I turned and shielded Shu Ruoxuan with my body, letting the vase strike me squarely on the back. The sudden turn of events also startled Shu Ruoxuan. She quickly reached out to pull me aside, then immediately had someone block in front of Shenrong. Her eyes filled with undisguised anger. Consort Shen, you are too presumptuous. Seeing her protect me, Shenrong immediately showed a mocking expression. I am presumptuous, so what can you do about it? Truly. Utterly arrogant. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught sight of Zhu Chengxian walking into the room and immediately raised my voice. Noble consort, no matter how favored you are, there is still a hierarchy in the harem. You should never resort to violence. I will resort to violence. And you? Shenrong was not the least bit afraid. She sneered coldly, about to say more, when she suddenly caught sight of Zhu Chengxian, who had appeared out of nowhere. Her arrogant and triumphant expression instantly turned aggrieved. Your Majesty, the newly entered Lady Yi selection insulted me, and the imperial noble consort even spoke up in her defense. I can't go on living. This ability to twist black and white is truly impressive. However, I too know how to use tears to win sympathy, so I immediately fell to the ground, tears welling in my eyes. and inadvertently revealed the wounds on my back, looking utterly pitiful. Why must your highness twist the truth so? If it's simply because I have offended you, you could have punished and disciplined me in private. Why drag the imperial noble consort into this? Today I happen to be wearing light-colored clothes, and it seems they were torn open, with the bloodstains on my clothes becoming further evidence of my being bullied. Shu Ruoxuan was already in poor health and had never enjoyed the emperor's favor. Shun Rong had always overstepped boundaries in various ways, and she had long harbored resentment, especially after seeing the blood on my back. She was so enraged that she vomited a large mouthful of blood on the spot. Shu Ruoxuan suddenly fainted, and chaos erupted in the Chengqian palace. Someone quickly ran out to summon the imperial physician. Seeing her pale face, I hurriedly took out the sachet I carried with me, retrieved the pill I had treasured for so long, and placed it in Shu Ruoxuan's mouth. "Ewn, what did you give the imperial noble consort? Do you know she has always been frail? If she took the wrong medicine, could you bear the responsibility?" Shenrong appeared to be scolding me, but the smile in her eyes was hard to conceal. She would have been delighted if something went wrong because of this, as then no one in the entire palace would hold a higher rank than her. But she would never get her wish, because Shu Ruoxuan soon woke up. As soon as she woke up, she said, "Your Majesty, Consort Shen has repeatedly offended me and nearly harmed me. Now she is twisting the truth, slandering me and Lady Yi with baseless accusations. I implore your Majesty to take action and punish Consort Shen. One is a frail and uninvolved cousin. The other is a beloved consort who, he knows all too well, is arrogant and domineering, in Zhu Chengshuan's heart. He may already have a conclusion, he just didn't want to punish Shenrong, so he could only beat around the bush." Eventually turning the topic to me, he asked, "Lady Yi, what medicine did you give to the imperial noble consort? When my father was young, he once saved a man. That man had no way to repay him, so he left behind this pill, saying it had miraculous effects. Even someone with only one breath left could be saved. Indeed, it had miraculous effects. And there truly was only this one pill, more precious than gold. It's so precious. Why are you willing to give it to me?" Shu Ruoxuan looked at me with a hint of curiosity and scrutiny in her eyes. I shook my head with a smile. Although this medicine is precious, it only truly becomes a miraculous remedy when it saves a life. So, whether it's saving my life or yours, it's all the same. After I finished speaking, a trace of approval appeared in Shu Ruoxuan's eyes. Even Zhu Chengxian, who had remained silent beside them, couldn't help but turn his gaze to my face. In contrast, Shenrong, who had been left out in the cold, was so furious that she gritted her teeth. In the end, I did save Shu Ruoxuan. Zhu Chengxian issued an edict, promoting me to the rank of siren and assigning several more palace maids and eunuchs to serve me. When Boyun learned of this, there was little joy on her face. Instead, a light sweat broke out on her forehead, and she couldn't help but mutter, "This move of yours was too risky." Deliberately provoking the noble consort to make her act out of line, you also took the opportunity to gain favor with the imperial noble consort. But that elixir was truly too precious. Why did you have to actually take it out? Today's events indeed had elements of my own scheming involved. Shu Ruoxuan is an innocent person, and her health is frail. Giving her that pill not only helped me gain favor in front of Zhu Chengxian but also protected her life. And it earned me a favor in return. This was a move that killed 3 birds with 1 stone. Just as I was about to say something more to Boyun, another eunuch arrived to deliver an oral decree, stating that Zhu Chengxian would come to Tingxue Pavilion after finishing his evening meal and that I should prepare to receive him. I glanced at Boyun, and as my trusted confidant, she naturally knew what needed to be done at this moment. I have entered the palace, and serving the emperor is now inevitable. But what kind of woman has Zhu Chengxian not seen? To truly enter his heart or gain his absolute favor, One must possess methods that ordinary people do not, so when he arrived at the listening snow pavilion, he saw the bedchamber filled with swirling mist. Behind the screen, in the enormous bathtub, I slowly rose to my feet the moment he entered. EWN. Ju Chengxuan's voice was somewhat hoarse, through the hazy screen. The sound of water stirred as I stood up, making it all the more alluring. Your Majesty has arrived, Tilda. My voice was soft, carrying a hint of delicate, affected sweetness. Ju Chengxian hummed in acknowledgement, then slowly walked further inside. At the same time, I draped the thin gauze hanging nearby over myself. With a few droplets of water still clinging to my collarbone, barefoot, I walked up to him and spoke with a coquettish laugh. Your concubine had intended to receive Your Majesty after washing up, but I didn't expect Your Majesty to arrive so early. It left me quite unprepared. Ju Chengxian was not a man without an appreciation for romance, at least in this moment. His gaze was inscrutable, lingering on me. Then he slowly reached out and placed his hand on my cheek, trailing down my neck until it rested just above my collarbone, gently touching the droplets of water. Wana is lovely. I have been negligent these past few days by not coming to see you. I shook my head, then stood on tiptoe and slowly wrapped my arms around his neck. It's enough that you're here now. If, Your Majesty, someone from the Guanju Palace has sent word that the noble consort is unwell. I was just about to speak when the eunuch at the door suddenly interrupted me. With just that one sentence, I saw Ju Chengxian, who had been somewhat dazed and confused moments before, become completely clear-headed in that instant. I decisively let go and took 2 steps back, returning to my previous understanding and considerate demeanor. Since the imperial consort is unwell, Your Majesty should go and see her first. Before he could mention leaving, I took the initiative to speak up. This way, he would carry a sense of guilt toward me in his heart, thinking I was sensible, which would, in turn, make certain others appear less so, though the process of winning hearts is long. What I ultimately desire is equally priceless, so I can afford to wait. Before Ju Chengxian left, he reached out and gently pinched my cheek. Wana is so well behaved. I'll come see you again tomorrow. With that, he hurried away, quite decisively. I just watched his departing figure completely disappear at the end of the corridor. The tenderness in my eyes faded, leaving only bone-chilling hatred. After all, Shenrong was the one he held dear in his heart. To bring her down so quickly is not an easy task after all. I am in no hurry, just waiting for an opportunity. So when I bumped into her head-on in the Imperial Garden, she immediately started mocking me without a second thought. The Emperor has already gone to your place. Yet all I had to do was mention a headache, and he still came to see me. EWN, even if you are beautiful, what does it matter? In the Emperor's heart, there will always be only me. Faced with her provocation. This time I did not retort but instead looked at her with a smile. Your Highness's reprimand is well-founded. Shenrong felt as if she had punched a ball of cotton. She was somewhat annoyed but had no way to vent her frustration. In the end, she could only lift her chin and look at me, saying, EWN, I have disliked you since the first time I saw you. Now that you have entered the palace, you are destined to live a lonely life, waiting for death. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught sight of the dignified and elegant figure not far away. I immediately cleared my throat and assumed a poised demeanor, saying, a woman should abide by the rules of female virtue and discipline. It is my fault that I have not won His Majesty's favor. From now on, I will strive to be diligent and self-reliant, sharing the burdens of Her Highness. I suddenly said this, and Shenrong looked at me with a bewildered expression. However, given that we were in a public place like the garden, with many eyes watching and gossip spreading, she couldn't just punish me without any reason. In the end, feeling bored, she deliberately bumped into me before leaving, and I fell to the ground. She let out a light laugh, then swayed her hips and walked away from me. Bo Yun quickly helped me up from the ground. her eyes showing a hint of worry. I smiled at her and said, "Don't worry, I'm fine. You've been bullied and still say it's nothing. Your Highness, you're just too soft-hearted. You should report this to the imperial noble consort and let her handle it." Boyun muttered something, then added, "Not long ago, the noble consort even hit you with a vase. The wounds on your back haven't even healed yet." I chuckled lightly, still maintaining my calm and gentle demeanor. Only after that figure in the distance had left did Boyun and I exchange a glance, letting out a slight sigh of relief before turning to head back to the listening snow pavilion. On the way back, Boyun leaned close to my ear and whispered, "Miss, you had me say that. Is there some deeper meaning behind it?" I pretended to be mysterious. "You'll know within an hour." An hour later, Shenrong, the imperial consort who held the emperor's favor above all others in the harem, was punished by the emperor with 3 days of house arrest. The reason: arrogant and domineering, lacking in feminine virtue. Boyun was full of curiosity, so I took out the album my father had given me before sending me into the palace. The small booklet was filled with countless portraits of nobles. Among them was the Grand Princess, the current emperor's paternal aunt, who once followed the previous emperor in building the empire, was left disabled as a result. Zhu Chengxian holds great respect for this aunt. Moreover, the Grand Princess has always been rigid and straightforward in character, believing that the 3 obediences and 4 virtues are the fundamental duties of women, and that women should be gentle, graceful, and obedient. She detests those who are arrogant and domineering the most, so when I met Shenrong and happened to see the Grand Princess who had not yet left the imperial garden, I lowered my posture to the extreme. Putting on a thoroughly obedient and gentle appearance, in such a contrast, Shenrong would appear even more arrogant, and such an arrogant imperial consort naturally displeased the Grand Princess. Even though Zhu Chengxian doted on her, he still had to give face to this close aunt, which ultimately led to her being punished with 3 days of house arrest. This was already quite rare, and with Shenrong under house arrest, Zhu Chengxian naturally thought of me. He turned over my nameplate, and I was carried into the hall of mental cultivation. He sat on the bed, looking at me with a faint smile, and was about to reach out to gently stroke my face. "Wanna, you, the one in the Guanju Palace, just fainted. The imperial physician has already been summoned. Would your majesty like to go and see?" That eunuch I was already familiar with, mustering his courage, spoke of the matter at Guanju Palace. Judging by the guilty look on his face, it was most likely false. But Zhu Chengxian showed concern in his eyes. "Roma has always been spoiled, and today I punished her with house arrest. I'm afraid she might have already cried herself unconscious by now." "Wanna, I understand, your majesty." I directly interrupted Zhu Chengshuan's words, then took his hand and gently comforted him. "The matter concerning the imperial consort is urgent. Your majesty should go and see her first. I am not of great importance," I smiled gently, still as tender and considerate as ever, so much so that at this moment, a hint of dissatisfaction began to surface in Zhu Chengshuan's eyes. However, this dissatisfaction was not directed at me. After I tidied up, I went straight back to the listening snow pavilion. Boyun took one look at me and could probably guess that I had been intercepted once again. "Miss, why aren't you the least bit anxious? Now that we've entered the palace, the most urgent matter is to serve the emperor in bed. It would be best if we could successfully conceive a prince. Only then can we secure the current wealth and honor. As I said before, in this second life, I want both their lives and the wealth and honor. I certainly haven't forgotten. But the more elusive I am, the more Zhu Chengxian will be interested in me. I don't just want his temporary favor. What I want is his kingdom." Shenrong was naturally doing it on purpose. After having her confinement lifted, she couldn't wait to come and flaunt in front of me. Having snatched 2 opportunities in a row, I have long told you that not just any woman can enter the deep palace. What does it matter if you have a face as beautiful as a flower? With just a flick of my finger, I can keep you from ever approaching His Majesty." As she spoke, I was feeding the fish by the small pond behind the listening snow pavilion. She couldn't even stand the sight of this. Snatching the fish food from my hand and then throwing it all to the ground. "EWN, perhaps someone like you truly only deserves a beggar," unconcealed mockery, as if certain I wouldn't fight back. My timid and submissive demeanor pleased her the most, but today, I didn't want to endure it any longer, so I stepped forward a bit, leaned close to her ear, and said, "Do you enjoy matchmaking so much? How about I arrange a match for you in the future, since you like beggars? I'll find you the best beggar in heaven and on earth. How does that sound?" Shenrong never expected me to speak so harshly. After the initial shock, her face was filled with anger, and she raised her hand to strike me. I deliberately followed her movement, leaning back the moment she raised her hand. Not forgetting to hook her dress before falling, I pulled her into the pond with me. Behind us was the pond, though not deep enough to drown, it could still make one choke badly. When noble consort fell into the water at the listening snow pavilion, Zhu Chengxian, upon hearing the news, rushed over immediately. At that time, I was changing clothes in the adjacent room. The door was suddenly kicked open, and Zhu Chengxian, his face filled with anger, was just about to open his mouth to demand an explanation when he caught sight of the not yet fully healed scars on my back. His expression froze, and the fury that had filled him instantly subsided by more than half. I pretended not to notice the change in his expression, putting on an innocent and pure appearance as I slowly walked barefoot toward him, tears still glistening in my eyes. "Your Majesty, it hurts Tilda." The right hand hit a rock, and a large area around the wrist was swollen and red, looking quite alarming. The anger in Zhu Chengshuan's eyes completely vanished. He scraped a bit of the ointment from the table with his finger and then applied it to my wound. "Being so careless, and falling into the pond with Ronga, she's making quite a fuss now." Zhu Chengxian deliberately said this, and I pretended not to understand anything, tightly tugging at his sleeve and nodding randomly. The noble consort was instructing me and standing by the pond. Perhaps the wind was a bit too strong. This excuse is really rather lame. But in this situation, with my clothes half undone, saying anything more would be too much of a mood killer. Zhu Chengshuan's gaze gradually deepened. He reached out to slowly lift my chin, leaning in as if to kiss me. "Your Majesty," that familiar eunuch spoke up again, each time at a crucial moment. Zhu Chengxian, having his intimate moments interrupted time and again, was now facing it for the third time. The impatience in his eyes was unmistakably clear, yet he still held back, choosing to push me away. Ronga might be feeling unwell. I didn't wait for him to finish speaking. I stood on tiptoe and kissed him, silencing those words. The ambiguity in the room gradually heated up. We separated a little, leaning our foreheads against each other. I stared at him and said, "Allow your concubine to be bold just this once. Tomorrow, I will return you to the noble consort." What followed was the rustling of red curtains as we journeyed together to the clouds of passion. After successfully serving in the bedchamber, I was promoted to a noble lady of the 5th rank. Upon learning of this, Shenrong caused another uproar in the Guanju Palace, making the entire palace aware of the incident. Since her entry into the palace, Zhu Chengxian had shown her immense favor. As a result, the other consorts in the rear palace were largely neglected, and though they harbored complaints, they had no choice but to endure in silence. Shenrong was making a big fuss, and Zhu Chengxian hurriedly went to comfort her. However, this time Shenrong was truly furious. Even with Zhu Chengshuan's soothing, she couldn't calm down for a while. Instead, she accidentally hurt Zhu Chengxian, leaving a bright red nail mark on his face. A dignified emperor, wounded in a fit of jealousy from the harem, losing his dignity. If this were to spread to the court, impeachment memorials would pile up in the imperial study, and even among the common people, it would become a laughingstock. Zhu Chengxian, as expected, was also angered. He stormed off and immediately went to the concubine's quarters in a nearby palace, essentially slapping Shen Rong in the face. Over the next 2 months, the scars on Zhu Chengshuan's face stubbornly refused to fade, and he harbored a growing resentment. Instead of seeing Shen Rong, he indulged in lavishing attention on the various concubines in the harem as a form of release, and the consequences of such actions. It was the long-neglected consort Lin who, upon gaining favor, became pregnant. Zhu Chengxian has been on the throne for 3 years, yet to this day, he has no offspring, not even a single princess. However, there have been concubines who became pregnant before, but they always suffered unexpected miscarriages, and later, with Shen Rong monopolizing his favor, the harem has been quiet for a long time. As an emperor, if one has no heir to inherit the throne, there is no face to meet the ancestors. This time, when consort Lin became pregnant, Zhu Chengxian was so overjoyed upon hearing the news that he immediately promoted her rank on the spot, elevating her to the 3rd grade Jiaoyi. Shen Rong, who was already in a fit of temper, was so enraged upon learning of this that she vomited blood and fainted on the spot. After all, she was the one who truly mattered to him. Upon hearing that she had vomited blood and fainted, Zhu Chengxian softened his stance and took the initiative to visit the Guanzhou Palace. Although Shen Rong had a very bad temper, she also knew that all her power and influence were bestowed by the man before her. Now, with the imperial consort pregnant, it was an extremely unfavorable situation for her. Therefore, no matter how much dissatisfaction she harbored in her heart, she had to endure it all. So, very soon, Shen Rong regained favor, and rumors even began to circulate in the palace that Zhu Chengxian had decided to let Shen Rong raise consort Lin's child in the future. The rumor grew increasingly intense within the inner palace. Thus, a few days later, consort Lin came to the Snowfall Pavilion, claiming it was just a casual chat between sisters, yet her words were filled with constant worry. Since I entered the palace, I have never won the emperor's favor. I finally had a child, but now I have to prepare the wedding dress for someone else. Yet, I cannot contend with the noble consort. What should I do? As she spoke, consort Lin began to shed tears. I could see her expression and naturally understand the meaning behind her words, so I chuckled and said, "If you trust me, sister, I certainly won't stand by and do nothing." Her crying stopped instantly, and she immediately grasped my hand tightly, a glimmer of hope shining in her eyes. She said, "Are you really willing to help me, sister?" I nodded, leaned in to whisper something in her ear, and then watched her leave. Boyun was having someone pack up the things when consort Lin arrived. She brought many gifts. My gaze fell on those items, and as I picked up one of the pearl bracelets, I suddenly couldn't help but sneer, perhaps to confirm the suspicions in my heart. That evening, Shen Rong came. She began with sarcastic remarks right from the start, deliberately standing in a crowded area. I simply watched quietly as she made a scene. "Noble Lady Yi, I know you have always been narrow-minded, but you must remember that in the harem, there is a clear hierarchy. I am the noble consort, while you are merely a lowly noble lady." My gaze fell upon her. Today she was dressed with great elegance and opulence. Her hair was adorned with various exquisite pearl hairpins, and she even had 2 sachets hanging from her waist. The beads wrapped around her wrist were particularly magnificent. I slowly approached her, but suddenly my foot twisted, and I stumbled directly toward Shen Rong. She couldn't dodge in time, but fortunately, a palace maid behind her caught her, preventing her from falling. However, the beads wrapped around her wrist and the sachets were accidentally pulled off by me and fell to the ground. "EWN, I think you did that on purpose." Shen Rong was very angry, and I quickly reached out to pick up the things from the ground, respectfully returning them to her. "I have been careless. Please calm your anger, noble consort." Shen Rong, who had always disliked me, surprisingly did not lose her temper this time. Instead, she just held the bead bracelet in her hand, suddenly snorted coldly, and then turned and left the listening snow pavilion. I watched her figure disappear completely. I slowly withdrew my hand from my sleeve, and at that moment, I too held a string of beads in my hand. Imperial Consort Lin invited me to the Imperial Garden to admire the newly bloomed flowers. Naturally, I did not refuse. After a light touch of makeup, I remembered to bring along some gifts she had given me a few days earlier and happily went to meet her. When Imperial Consort Lin saw me, her smile was exceptionally sweet. I was worried you might not like the jewelry I gave you, but seeing you wear it today, it's clear you truly are a kindred spirit. I held the bead bracelet in my hand, smiling just the same. The things my sister gave me are all rare treasures, and I adore them dearly. Therefore, it was only natural to wear them out and flaunt them. Shenrong had recently taken to strolling through the Imperial Garden every day, so it was no surprise to run into her by the pavilion. But just as I and Consort Lin were about to bow to her, someone behind me suddenly tugged at me. Although I had been prepared, I was still somewhat startled, taking advantage of the sudden chaos. And with Shenrong now standing extremely close to us, I discreetly stuck out my foot and tripped her. In the end, several people all fell to the ground. The scene was in complete disarray, especially Consort Lin, who was pregnant. It seemed as though she had slipped on something, causing her to fall to the ground, and fresh blood appeared between her legs. With the only pregnant consort in trouble, Zhu Chengxian naturally rushed over immediately. As soon as Shenrong saw him arrive, she immediately pointed at me and said, "I saw it with my own eyes. It was noble Lady Yi who broke her string of beads, causing Consort Lin to fall." At the same moment, someone had already gathered all the beads that had been scattered on the ground and presented them to the emperor. Consort Lin's face was deathly pale at this moment, her eyes brimming with tears. It was unclear whether she was filled with regret or some other emotion, but she seemed somewhat numb, staring at me with intense hatred. "Noble Lady Yi, where is the string of beads in your hand?" Because of these words, Zhu Chengxian looked at me with a gaze as if he wanted to kill. I remained calm and composed, slowly taking out the bead bracelet from my other sleeve. Just before the incident, I had intended to enjoy some tea, so I put the bracelet away. I don't know why the noble consort is trying to implicate me, but this bracelet is definitely not mine. You still dare to deny it?" Shenrong shouted angrily, then pointed at the beads with great severity. "This bead bracelet was given to you by Consort Lin. She knows it best. How could she possibly mistake it?" I sneered, taking one of the beads from the tray right in front of her and showing it to everyone present. "Such fine beads, according to rank and protocol, should only be possessed by you, noble consort." As soon as these words were spoken, Zhu Chengxian's gaze immediately fell upon the beads. Although they looked very similar, upon closer inspection, subtle differences could still be discerned, especially now. These beads placed on the plate are each incredibly precious, and the palace records also show that only those of consort rank or higher are qualified to wear them. But above the consort rank, aside from the rarely seen imperial noble consort, there is only noble consort Shenrong, and the bead bracelet gifted by Consort Lin is currently in my hands. So, if someone deliberately broke the bracelet to cause Consort Lin to slip, how could that person possibly be me? The evidence was personally presented by Shenrong. Earlier in the Imperial Garden, the scene was already chaotic, making it impossible to tell who pushed whom or who broke the pearl strand. All that was known was that someone slipped, someone fell, and there were many small pearls scattered on the ground. I looked at Zhu Chengxian. "Your Majesty, such a fine pearl strand could only be obtained if the noble consort bestowed it upon me. However, it is well known throughout the 6 palaces that I have never been on good terms with the noble consort. Thus, I had no opportunity to receive a pearl strand from her as a gift." Shenrong, now realizing the situation, looked flustered but still held up the pearl strand in her hand. "Noble Lady Shen, you are falsely accusing me. Yet you fail to realize that this pearl strand has never left my possession." I looked at her and suddenly burst into laughter. The day's farce ended with Consort Shenrong being demoted to Jiaoyi for plotting against the imperial heir. After all, a consort who adored luxury and insisted on using only the finest things in the palace. The bead bracelet currently held in hand is the kind that only imperial concubines would use, which is already highly inappropriate for one's status and utterly unreasonable. So if there must be a culprit, how could it possibly be me? The item belongs to Shenrong. Consort Lin herself had no idea who pushed her, only knowing that beads were scattered on the ground. Thus, the only possible culprit could only be Shenrong, because it was she who broke it in the first place. After returning to the listening snow pavilion, Bo Yun closed the door to my bedchamber for me, then collapsed to the floor, panting heavily, looking as if she had just survived a great ordeal. "Miss, that was far too dangerous this time." Staring at the bead bracelet in my hand, I couldn't help but nod in agreement. A consort who has never had any interaction with me, whose rank is already above mine, even if she wanted to find someone to stand up for her, would never have come to me. She should have gone to Shu Ruoxuan, who is the imperial noble consort, the only one in status who can surpass Shenrong. Yet she specifically came to me, putting on a pitiful and delicate appearance, and even gave me many precious gifts. This is already extremely suspicious. Shenrong, appearing again on the same day, spoke openly in front of everyone, making it clear to all that I, a mere noble lady, had been neglecting her all along, and around her waist, there happened to be a string of beads that looked similar, yet was made of a different material. With so many coincidences, how could I not be suspicious? So I deliberately bumped into her, using the wide sleeves of my robe to cover the exchange, quickly swapping the bead string given to me by Consort Lin. And then, on the way to the imperial garden, I let Shenrong break the beads in my hand, and I had taken another string early on, so I could produce it immediately to prove my innocence. As for the broken string, it was naturally a precious item that only Shenrong, as a noble consort, could wear. Consort Lin and Shenrong, these two joined forces to try to bring me down. Naturally, I wouldn't just sit back and wait, so I countered their moves as they came, which led to the current situation. Accused of plotting against the imperial heir, even if Shenrong remained favored, a thorn had already been planted in the emperor's heart. To remove that thorn, she would have to take action. So, when she ordered the imperial household department to make new riding attire, I knew exactly what she was planning. Master previously inquired and learned that the emperor and Shenrong first met on the hunting grounds. Shenrong, with her heroic bearing, once shielded the emperor from an assassin, taking a sword strike in his place, which earned her the emperor's deep affection. Since then, the emperor often took her hunting, and 3 out of 10 times, they would encounter assassins. Each time, it was Shenrong who stood in front of him, sustaining injuries that were never fatal, which only deepened her favor. Bo Yun spoke softly, her gaze frequently shifting toward me as she spoke. This clever little girl had naturally sensed that something was amiss. Using a life-saving favor to win the emperor's pity is indeed a clever move. I nodded, my eyes suddenly turning fierce. In that case, let me see whether Zhu Chengxian, after learning the whole truth, will still love her or not. Everything is just as I expected. The emperor went hunting, and many concubines in the palace followed, including Shenrong. She had just been punished, and Zhu Chengxian was already feeling quite displeased. Yet, when he saw her in her riding attire, he couldn't help but recall the moments they had relied on each other for survival in the past. In his heart, a sense of pity for her arose once again. So when the afternoon hunt began, Shenrong rode her horse to follow by his side, but today it should have been me accompanying the king. I sat on the horse, somewhat unsteady because I wasn't very skilled. Seeing this, Shenrong laughed heartily. Noble Lady Yi, since you don't know how to ride a horse, why push yourself so hard? Be careful not to be thrown off and lose your life. As she spoke,
Emperor, in order to gain favor, Zhu Chengxian wanted to defend her, but when he reached out and touched his own face, he ultimately still cared about his dignity. Moreover, she deliberately intended to harm me, but in the end, evil deeds bring their own retribution. She ended up ruining her own face. Seeing Shenrong, blooded and disfigured, Zhu Chengxian, for once, hardened his heart. Shenrong was stripped of her title and reduced to a commoner, sentenced to lifelong imprisonment in the cold palace. Because of an unexpected incident, we returned to the palace early. Shenrong is now a cripple, and no one is treating the wounds on her face. As a kind-hearted person, I naturally couldn't bear to watch her bleed to death. I sent medicine to help her keep her life. However, the side effects of the medicine are obvious. Her once beautiful face will become increasingly hideous as the wounds fester. Shenrong, with her disfigured face, was once the moon in the sky, but for Zhu Chengxian, the sight of this ferocious visage now inevitably stirred different emotions in his heart. Boyun, has the person been sent into the palace? I gently stroked my 5-month pregnant belly, now that I had become a Jowie, and with Shenrong gone from the harem, Zhu Chengxian doted on me. I often advised him to share his favor equally, earning the gratitude of all the concubines in the harem. Boyun nodded, with his legs broken and castrated. He has already been sent to the cold palace to keep Shenrong company. Zhongda, this person whom I hate to the bone just as much, in my previous life, killed my father and then killed me. This time, I certainly won't let him off either, Boyun added, but it seems Shenrong didn't recognize him. I smiled. This was exactly as expected. Shenrong is someone who speaks with lofty words, but deep down, he looks down on those he deems lowly. That's precisely why I insisted on having a beggar serve him, to torment him. As for Zhongda, in our past life, we were forced into marriage, but at his core, he is a pervert, so I must also make Shenrong taste this bitterness. Many more years have passed in the blink of an eye. I gave birth to the only prince in the harem, becoming the imperial consort, second only to the empress in the inner palace, Shu Ruoxuan, and I also became friends. I knew that she had a young man in her heart whom she longed for, so ever since entering the palace, she had been taking various medicines to weaken her body, all to avoid being favored. As for the one in the cold palace, Zhu Chengxian also thought of her at certain moments and even wanted to visit the cold palace. But as soon as he reached the entrance, he saw her almost completely disfigured face and was so frightened that he vomited on the spot. Shenrong watched as the emperor, who had once vowed to love her for a lifetime, now looked at her with unconcealed disdain, completely extinguishing all hope within her. Hatred, under Zhongda's relentless torment day after day, finally erupted in full force. I looked at my 6-year-old son, and as the only concubine in the harem to have a prince, my influence grew stronger by the day. Boyun, it's time for all of this to end. I look at the sky outside the window, dark and oppressive, making me feel quite uncomfortable. I don't like this, so everything should come to an end. 5 days later, the gate of the palace was pushed open by someone unknown. Shenrong, who had already gone mad, ran out holding a knife and happened to encounter Zhu Chengxian, who was lost in thought alone not far away, filled with hatred. She rushed forward recklessly and plunged the knife into his chest. Not dead, but unable to live, Shenrong was seized by the guards, while Zhu Chengxian was in critical condition. Within the harem, I had already gained the authority to oversee the affairs of the 6 palaces, and as the mother of the imperial prince, I naturally had the right to deal with Shenrong. Inside the emperor's bedchamber, Zhu Chengxian lay on the bed, his face pale and ghastly. During these days, I have been serving by his side every single day, never missing a moment, and I have been exceptionally obedient. Zhu Chengxian knew his time was near and entrusted me with many things. Wana, once our child ascends the throne, you will be the Empress Dowager. Ruoxuan is frail, so treat her well. As for Shenrong, that woman has gone mad, but after all, we shared many years of affection. grant her a cup of poisoned wine, I did not speak immediately. Instead, I first finished feeding him the medicine prescribed by the imperial physician for the day before slowly responding. Sister Ruoxuan lived a life of melancholy. She had a young man she truly loved. But for the sake of the family's honor and your harem's balance of power, she had no choice but to enter the palace. She was already a pitiful soul, and I will treat her well from now on. I will personally escort her out of the palace, help her change her name and identity, so that she can spend her life with the one she loves. As for Shenrong, how could a cup of poisoned wine ever quell the hatred in my heart? She always prided herself on being noble and aloof. So I broke her legs, severed the tendons in her hands, carved over 100 characters for prostitute on her body with a knife, and threw her into the beggar den at the ruined temple in the east of the city. Oh, and that's not the end of it. After all, I hate her so much, she naturally had to die by my hand. There was also Zhong Da, another man who brought me immense suffering in my past life. I sought out the most excruciating poison in the world and forced it all down his throat. He writhed in agony, clawing at his own flesh until it was torn to shreds, but I refused to let him die. I made him live, longing for death, tormenting him day after day until his body was a bloody, mangled mess, with maggots breeding in his rotting flesh, until he finally met a miserable end. I smile, rising slowly under Zhu Chengshuan's increasingly terrified gaze. I tell him, just like now, she was already broken like a rag doll, begging me to spare her, but I reached out, gripped her neck just as I'm gripping yours now, and kept squeezing, tightening, until finally, all life was gone. As I finished speaking, Zhu Chengxian, lying on the bed, gradually stops struggling, his eyes rolling back as he finally dies. I release my grip, carefully wiping the filth from my hands with a handkerchief. How wonderful, I have finally, with my own hands, slain the last of my enemies. With Zhu Chengshuan's passing, my child has become the reigning emperor, as the Empress Dowager. With my young son still in his tender years, it is only natural that I must now preside over the court and attend to state affairs. Shu Ruoxuan passed away from illness not long after. In the common world, there appeared an ordinary couple, deeply in love and inseparable, and I have fulfilled the vow I made back then. Wealth and power are now in my hands. The lives of my enemies have been taken. Later, I accompanied the emperor on his tour. When we traveled to Jiangnan, I happened to witness a wealthy family's daughter throwing an embroidered ball to choose her husband, and the scene was quite lively. This time, no strange individuals disrupted the joyous occasion. The young lady shyly tossed the embroidered ball, and it landed perfectly on the returning top scholar. After exchanging a glance, the young lady smiled bashfully, while the scholar appeared gentle and handsome. From this moment on, the world has gained another loving couple. After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you like this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.